Hey guys, Sullivan here. I am in my Dahlia Garden. One of the things you might notice is there's a fence. So we're not going to get into the fence stuff because that feels like it needs its own separate video, or maybe it'll be in the next chapter of the renovation series. But we are standing under my new terra trellis arbors, and they were a definite investment. And I may have ordered them pre-coronavirus, but I am glad they're here. They are gorgeous. They will age beautifully, and it gives me a lot of time to think about what I'm going to grow on them. But we are standing in the center of this year's Dahlia Garden, which is also called the Island Bed. And just kind of show you the progress of where I'm at with my dahlias for this season. Some of them look great. Some of them have had a few setbacks. They are getting consistent, regular watering now. The irrigation is set up. Today, I lightly mulched them. So let's just talk about where I'm at with the dahlias. And let's get into dahlias. And the two really exciting things that got finished this week, besides the fence, which is probably going to be the highlight of the next few years, even though I know that the garden will be really special as it progresses, but the fence really is quite beautiful. I got these two cool trellis. I had been planning on these for this spot for quite a while and was really, really happy to get them. And so knowing that I was going to get them, I had to use lots of other recycled things since they are the epitome of investing in like a long-term feature. So for this season, I'm just growing some hyacinth bean on them because I had it and it needed something to climb on. And I am going to be thinking about what to grow on them long-term. And the dahlias, as you can see, are at all different stages of growth. I just potted them up in some peat and a little bit of potting soil as they came in. And so they are just at all different phases of growing. So they've been potted up anywhere from like the end of March and 325 to just a few weeks ago when I got some sale tubers from Swan Island. So I will sit down at the desk and show you guys the spreadsheet because of course there's a spreadsheet. The map and planting is a little less compulsive this year than last year, which was very rigorous. This was a little more loose. Still a plan, but nothing too crazy in terms of like this must go here, that must go there. I'm kind of rolling with it. My tubers from last year that I saved did not fare very well, and they also weren't labeled. So I don't actually know what colors they are. So I have them potted up and growing elsewhere because I say I'm going to be less compulsive this year, but the reality is that I still want it to look a certain way from all sides, and I don't know what colors these dahlias are. And last year I grew, I don't know, probably like 7 or 8 different color families. So I'll just let them grow somewhere else, and then ID them, and then I can label them and decide if they're keepers. But I didn't do a good job taking care of my dahlias after they came out of the ground, and I had a lot of losses. So these are mostly, everything in here is fresh tubers for this year, which I knew it was happening. I knew when I put them away that I wasn't doing something right. I didn't get them packed up. I had them washed and dried and curing in the garage, and then it got really cold and I didn't take care of them, so they did not fare well, and I didn't think they would. And also I had just a lot of breakage and damage pulling them out, And I had lots of tubers that didn't totally fall apart. I just didn't have a lot of eyes. So they weren't growing. So it was a lot of trial and error. So second year, learned a few important things. If you watched last year's Dahlia Garden video, you'll know that I did not put my stakes in late. My stakes are the same acrylic rods that I used last year. I'm also using the Velcro binding tape that I used last year. I am using forage from my property, stepping stones. We found these old stone steps going up to the back of what's my office. We dug them out. They're making a lovely walkway. My husband, Tim, really dislikes the stick look, but I keep trying to explain to him the clear acrylic is much cooler looking than like bamboo or green plant stakes. They blow a little in the breeze, and I think that that's actually going to be good for the plants. Last year, I taught a workshop, the design portion of a full day Dahlia workshop up at Bear Creek in the Hudson Valley. And I attended the growing portion of the workshop, which was incredibly interesting and eye-opening to see how their operation works and the tens of thousands of dahlias that they grow. But one thing that I learned is that overhead watering, not the worst thing in the world for the dahlias. They use an overhead watering system and they hill their dahlias instead of staking them, which does make sense because it would be a ton of work even to run long rows. But so the overhead watering, according to Deborah, allows the plants to move, and it strengthens the stems. And I have to say that is something that I had noticed about the Bear Creek dahlias compared to, it's like dog party outside. That is something that I had noticed as someone who uses a bunch of different dahlias in flower arranging, that the Bear Creek dahlias had these like super solid, amazing stems. So I don't think overhead watering is the worst thing in the world. I have set up drip system because the new beds that I have made of compost and cardboard, which you can check out, there's a video talking about that, they were not holding moisture, which is good for dahlias. You don't want them sitting in like soggy water, but the compost was not holding onto some of that water. So I needed to get some plumbing work done to get my drip system totally up and running, and there is going to be a really comprehensive beginner's drip irrigation video because in 2 seasons I have learned so much, and my plumber was actually like super impressed with everything that I was doing. And I was like, well, hey, there's no weddings until 2021 right now, so if you need an irrigation specialist, I'm probably not there yet, but I will be in a few seasons. So anyway, so the dahlias are growing on. Now they have water. Then, of course, as soon as you get the irrigation going, buckets of rain. But and then I ended up today putting down a nice light layer of triple shredded hardwood mulch, which I gotta say, it's like my favorite mulch I've ever gotten bagged. It's from Four Corners, which is a Fry Brothers brand, which is like our local compost, and they have this great super finely shredded bark mulch. I mean, it's as nice looking as the compost, and that will help control some of the drainage or prevent some of the evaporation. And I just kind of kept it away from the plant collars. Collar, is that the right word? I kept it away from the actual tubers and the bud eyes where the sprouts are coming from, so that water wouldn't pool or collect there. Before I put the mulch down, I tested the drip irrigation to make sure that I had the coverage that I wanted where I needed it, and that I also, you know, like I can run, because of the type of tubing that I'm using, I can run an extra hose and emitter to areas that maybe there's a higher concentration of tubers, because I planted with a little more space than last year, but I still plant pretty close together. So there's 175 plants in here, which is about where I ended up last year. I have identified a few losses. I have my recipe for Dahlia Dust, which is the Dahlia Dust. That sounds very goop, doesn't it? It's just a mix of the amendments that I put in each hole. I just mix it up in one big batch, so I can just put a couple scoops in. So let's look at that. All right, so Dahlia Dust. So the Dahlia Dust is composed of a few different amendments that I decided to use this year on this year's Dahlia project. I have been using Biotone starter fertilizer from Espoma on everything that I'm planting. So triple phosphate, or sometimes known as superphosphate, is for strong stems. Bone meal is another kind of calcium-rich stem strengthening amendment. And the azomite, the mineral dust, is something that I had gotten for peony planting. It's just, it's from Utah. It's like one of these things, it sounds like something out of a spy movie. It's like a rare earth mineral that is mined in Utah, and it just kind of contains lots of, like, it's sometimes called rock dust. It's just like, in humans, if you take vitamins, a multivitamin, it's got vitamins and minerals in it. These are those minerals. And this recipe generates enough for anywhere from 2 to 4 tablespoons per plant. So in the example here, where I'm digging the hole for what's a really teeny tiny sprouted tuber, doesn't have a root system yet, it's got a lot of peat, I'm using 2 scant tablespoon scoops of the Dahlia Dust for a plant of this size. If you look at the one next to it, it's 8-10 inches tall. It has 4 sets of leaves. If you are pinching, that would be a plant you could pinch. That's one that I would give generous 3 to 4 tablespoons of the mixture, just because it's a more established root ball and plant. It just, unfortunately, the camera angle was terrible for that, so we didn't get to see that. So the Dahlia Dust, I use a little less on the little guys, because I don't want to shock the very tiny root system that exists. And then at the same time, I use a little bit more on those bigger plants that have slightly more roots established, just to give them a little bit of help. None of the plants had any transplant shock issues. What they did go into was, here are all the dahlias I'm growing. And then this is the sketch of how I laid them out. So there, it's pretty straightforward. I did the amber apricot tones if you're standing looking at the fence, they are on the far right. And then it just kind of goes amber, apricot, coral. And then we have the walkway and the arches. And then kind of blush, and the only ones in blush are the extraordinary amount of cafe au laits and the shallow noels that I got. And then from blush, we go into pink and then pink to berry. And I feel like black is nuit d'été, which means summer night. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching the start of this year's Dahlia Garden. I definitely feel optimistic, which is not normally my nature, but I feel like I learned so much last year and so much via Deborah at Bear Creek, that I feel like I'm in a better place with keeping my dahlias growing straight and tall and steady, and I can't wait to start cutting. And I don't know if it's a bet with myself or maybe with you guys, but my bet based on what I see is, not counting the like little short guys that bloom early, I think Labyrinth or Penhill Watermelon are going to be the first to bloom, because those are the plants that look like ready to roll. So thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe so you can follow along, see what happens. We should have flowers. It's mid to end of June. We should have flowers starting into the beginning of July. Last year I had them right at the last week of June on like the shorties. So we'll see. But thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Come follow me on Instagram at Sullivan_Owen if you want to see some of the things I make from my garden, since I basically don't leave the yard. Which it's turning out to be a pretty nice place to spend 4 months. And I will see you guys soon. Thanks so much. Bye.